And let's move to the next talk.
Yes, we have last 4 talks, and now we should have online Beth. Are you there? Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Perfect.
So I'm very, very happy about this because I was chatting with Matthias, who was when I sort of started thinking about this, and he was saying I'll have to convince Beth to do a talk because she's been doing R and moved to F# and has a lot of interesting stories and experiences to share. So I'm very glad that we've actually did make this happen.
All right, so let's start. Let's jump in.
So my name is Beth, and I live near Knoxville, Tennessee, in the southeastern United States. I'm married, and I have 3 sons. I graduated back in 1988 from Georgia Tech, or Georgia Institute of Technology, and I went to work in manufacturing for Alcoa. Later, I would move from engineering into production management. And after the birth of my first child, I began to contract for several different Alcoa locations, but still in manufacturing. When my oldest child went to college, I decided I wanted to get out of the aluminum industry. I went back to college. I went to the University of Tennessee, and I got my master's in business analytics or data science. While I was taking classes, was actually in a data mining class, I was introduced to the programming language R. After that class, I decided I wanted to learn as much about R as I possibly could. I liked how easy it was for me to explore, clean, and model data and visualize data in R. I'm going to do a quick check here. You're not hearing me?
We can hear you perfectly, but we see just you, which is amazing. But if you're sharing something, it's not there.
Yes, I am. I'm so sorry.
No problem. No problem.
Share.
I thought this was just so amazingly well rehearsed talk. You don't need slides.
Exactly.
Which I'm never brave enough to do, but I always admire people who do that.
Okay, let's try.
It should get there. So there's the present button at the bottom, and then you have to, depending on the browser, I think.
This worked in our test the other day. Let's
try. Of course. Works as our machine. Yes.
Okay, it's showing that I'm sharing my entire screen. Entire screen, screen 2, share. So you're not seeing anything?
I think something's just appeared.
Yeah.
And we're going to get it there for you.
Okay, there we go.
Out there, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm telling you that after the birth of my first child, or actually after my first child went to college, I said, hey, I don't want to work in the aluminum industry anymore. I want to do something different. So I went back to school and I got my degree at the University of Tennessee in business analytics or data science. There I was introduced to the R programming language, and I loved it. It was really easy to explore data, clean, model, and visualize data. While I was still working for my degree, I went to work for Simulation Dynamics Incorporated, or SDI. And there I was creating simulation models and writing components for a simulation library. But in 2020, SDI sent me to a training class led by Matthias Brandewander, and the topic was machine learning in F#. Later that year, SDI created an F# dev team, and I had a new love. It was F#. So I tell you so many details of my background to really emphasize that I am not a .NET developer, that I'm really a relatively new learner in F#, and I'm a user, but I have a manufacturing and data science background. So again, I'm not an R expert or an F# expert, but I love to learn, and I love to think about what's the most effective way to learn, what's efficient. How I came to F# is going to be different than how most of you did. I didn't come through C#, although I have used C# in my career. I came to F# after being fully submersed in the data science world. So today I want to tell you about my journey to learn both R and F#. and how the past were similar and how they were different. And then I want to tell you about my biggest hurdle in coming to F#. So indulge me for just a bit. I'm assuming that most of you don't know much about R, so I'm going to need about 4 minutes to tell you a few things about R. So R is a domain-specific language that was developed for the sole purpose of statistical computing. It was created in 1991 by 2 professors of statistics. It was released in 2000 to the public. It's open source, it's free. Like NuGet for .NET, R has a repository for packages called CRAN. Back in the beginning of June, there were almost 20,000 packages in CRAN. There are several good IDEs for R, but I use RStudio. R has evolved to being a data science language, not just a statistical computing language. And one of the biggest reasons for that is a package called the tidyverse, and it's really a collection of packages. There are 8 packages installed in the tidyverse library. These packages share common design philosophy, common grammar, and common data structures. So when you learn one package in R, it's really easy, or in the tidyverse, when you learn one, it's easy to pick up that next one. And when you know 2 or 3, you can really get a lot of work done. So this means that the tidyverse is a really efficient investment. So the whole term tidy means that your data is tidy when every column is a variable, every row is an observation, and every cell is a value. And like F#, the tidyverse encourages you to pipe your data into functions. So here's an example of some tidyverse grammar. You can see this pretty heavy piping symbol here has been replaced recently with the same pipe that F# uses. So here we're seeing some data frame of diamond characteristics is being piped into verbs or functions and being transformed. So in a lot of ways, this looks a lot like what you might see in F#. It's functional, it's got a pipe, and it's got verbs similar to what you would see in F#. You know, you can imagine an array dot group by. This mutate is creating a new variable. This arrange is actually doing a sort. So now to finish up my quick intro to R, I'm going to give you a super tiny demo. Let's look at. So here's RStudio. Has 4 different panes. This top pane is a source editor to open, edit, and execute programs. Then you've got a console pane down here in the bottom left where you can, your command line area. Then you have an environment area up here where you can actually see the objects that are in scope, and you can actually explore those objects. Down in the bottom here, you've got a file manager, a package manager, you've got some help, and your plots are going to show up down here as well. Now to open a library in R, you're going to use the library function. And I'm starting off with this datasets library because it's a really small thing that has a really big impact in R. This is actually just a library of data sets. And if we take a look at what's in here, there's just a lot of different data sets, different kinds of data sets, some big, some small, all kinds. And what's really cool about this is when people share code in the R community, they go back and they use these data sets so that if you send me a code example, or if I'm using a code example from one of your blogs, I'm not having to understand your data. I'm not having to download some data that I've never seen before. I'm not having to focus on the download of the data. I'm really focusing on the code that you're sharing. So let's take a look at one of these data sets real quick. And I can see that this is miles per gallon data for different cars, different engine configurations. But in R, you can always put a question mark in front of something and execute that. And I can get some really good help. So I can see that this is from the Motor Trend Cars Road Test. I can see I've got 32 observations, 11 variables. And at the bottom of most of the help, there's some code that you can lift out and it can get you started quickly. So real quick, let's open the tidyverse. Let's open this read Excel library that's going to let me read a CSV file. And I'm going to change my working directory. And I'm going to read in a file, a CSV file of data science salaries. And I'm going to bind that to a variable df for data frame. Pretty quickly, you see I get a object over here in my environment window. And if I click on this blue arrow, I can see all the variables that came in. I can see how many observations. I can also see the type that it was read in as, and I can start to see some sample data. So that's pretty handy. Now, if I want to go back, well, I'm going to show you one more thing actually. Let's click on that data frame or that variable, and I actually get an Excel type representation of the data. And this is really nice because in R, if you're doing data transformations, you can actually go back and check and see, did I do them correctly? But if a data set is really large, you're not going to be able to do that kind of thing very effectively. So you're going to use more like this summary function that comes out of the base library. And what this does is it shows you all the different variables that you read in. And if it's a numeric, it's going to give you some baseline information. It's going to give you the minimum value, the maximum value, the mean, the median, the interquartiles. Now these came in as strings or characters, so I'm not getting as much information. So real quick, I'm going to change this from a character into a factor, and I'm going to run it again. And I can see some great overview information about those variables. So I can see the experience level had 4 different levels of employment type, lots of different job titles. The point here is that pretty quickly, I can see what's going on in this data set. I can come up to speed on this data set. Now, one of the things that R is known for are really pretty graphics. So let's do one graphic and then we'll wrap this up. So here, I've plotted the salary in US dollars on the x-axis, and I've told it that I want a different fill for every experience level. And then this plus sign says I'm going to layer on things to my graphic. I'm going to layer on the fact that I want this to be a geome density, which is really a probability density. And I want the transparency to be 0.4 so that I can see the difference in all these experience levels. So not a lot of code yet at all. Some pretty basic code, but I can really understand my data set, and I've got a pretty great visualization. So that wraps up my quick tour of R. So let's talk about how easy or how difficult it is to learn R and F#. Now, if you tell me that you wanted to learn F#, the first thing I'm going to do is recommend a book. I know a lot of people don't like books, but I think books are a great resource because they're a survey of the landscape. And they're going to let you come up to speed with the terminology and the main concepts, even if you don't get them all the first time you read it. So both R and F# have great survey text, and I would recommend all of these books. So from the standpoint of available summary text, their R and F# are doing great. Well, how about the online community? Both R and F# have active and helpful online community. R bloggers was always my go-to for learning what's new in R, and similarly, I really enjoy F# Weekly. Now, you also go to the online community when you have issues, when you have questions. And here's where my experience between learning R and learning F# begins to diverge. If I get stuck with an issue in R, I can go looking for help, and I'm going to find several good examples online where people have encountered the same issue that I've had. Now, when I do this with F#, I get fewer hits, but the bigger problem is that most of that information is generally written for a C# user. So it's a bit more challenging when you're coming from the data science world to find the help that you need online. More specifically, code examples for visualizations are more plentiful in R. And visualizations are the best way to gain and share insight from data. R has several sites like this one where you can create complex graphics, and they're going to get you started. Let's take a look at this website. Let's see. So what's great about this website is it says, hey, come in here and tell me what kind of data you've got. You've got numeric, categorical, numeric and categorical, maps, network, time series. And I'm going to give you a series of graphs that you can choose from. Let's just pick one here from numeric. 2 variables. There's a chart down here I really like. It's a scatter with a marginal plot. It's going to come over here and tell me a little bit about a scatter plot, some things to be worried about that I need to be careful about. And then I can go over to the R graph gallery. And here it's going to give me a couple of really good examples. I'm going to find the one that I want, the marginal distribution. And it's going to give me 3 different examples of that type. And it's going to give me the code associated with it. And if I keep going, it's going to give me some customizations. And so this is really super helpful. One thing to notice here is that it's using that MT cars data set that we looked at a second ago. So I can really pick this up quickly, drop it in my code. I've got access to that data, and I can start making changes to make it work for me. So this is really helpful. I do love Plotly.net. I'm learning it. I love the interactive charts in the browser. It's really cool when you're demoing for folks. It makes a big impression. But it's really challenging for me to find the kinds of examples that I need, especially when you want to get a little bit more complex. But I think the biggest difference between learning R and learning F# is a comprehensive data or a comprehensive training site. When I decided that I wanted to learn R, I bought a subscription to DataCamp for $29 a month. They have these designed learning tracks for things like R, Python, SQL, many other technologies. But I started with the data science for R track. And you can see down here that I completed 19 courses. And those courses were generally 4 hours, so it's a pretty significant investment. But what I liked about this is when I clicked on that data science for R track, it laid out a path for me. And I knew exactly what I needed to learn. I knew the order that I needed to learn them in. And it was a comprehensive and interactive training site. So it wasn't just like I was watching videos like sometimes you do on Pluralsight. I really felt like I had a plan and I knew what I needed to accomplish to be effective. So I think the Tidyverse and DataCamp are the foundation of why so many people use R for data science. There's a well-defined path and you can come up to speed quickly and you can do meaningful work quickly. Now, I've been really blessed in the training area for F#. I was a member of that newly developed dev team at SDI, and Matthias Brandewander was helping us get up to speed, providing us pair programming and providing us training. We also had a weekly session with compositional IT with Isaac Abraham. We also had access to Matthew Cruz, who was at SDI. So our experience of coming up to speed is going to be really different. When I think about what I did on my own, like I would have done for R when I was trying to get myself to be efficient and proficient, I depended on things like the DevOwl recordings. I worked through all of those. I also read all of F# for Fun and Profit. And I'm seeing more and more LinkedIn or training showing up in my LinkedIn feed. So it's there, but it's not there in a way that you could say, hey, you need to start here and you need to end up here. So in many ways, learning R and F# were similar. I do think there's a little bit more infrastructure for learning R in an efficient way. So what was my greatest challenge learning F# coming from the data science mindset? I think my biggest challenge was letting go of the data frame, or the rectangular shaped data. Here's an example of the data that is similar to my first big F# project. So each row in this data set is an event on a production line within a plant. And every line could have a status of either running or down. Both events have a start time, a downtime, and a duration. If the line was down, it could be either planned down or it could be a failure. And there's always a main reason for the downtime event, and there could be a secondary reason. If the line was running, there's no downtime information, but just the good number of items produced. So armed with my initial understanding, everything I learned so far about F#, I started with this data record structure for a production event. During our first pair programming session on the subject, Matthias talked me through his proposed structure. And it was something like what you see on the right. Now keep in mind that I'd already read Domain Modeling Made Functional from cover to cover with a highlighter, but I was still struggling with how he got here. And so it just goes to show that just because somebody explains a concept really well, it doesn't mean that information is yours until you've struggled with it. And I was really struggling with this. I couldn't figure out why this design had to be so complicated, why it had to be so heavy, and why we had to spend so much time up front discussing this when we could already be working on the problem. Defining units of measure seemed like a real overkill to me. I couldn't figure out why I would want to wrap a base type in a single case DU. And I get that status has 2 levels, down and running, but I didn't understand how one of them could carry a downtime event and one could carry items. And I was really naive. I thought maybe let's just use an empty string on that second reason code if we don't have one. And I didn't understand why I couldn't have a field for start time, end time, and duration. Why did I need to calculate one of those? Why couldn't I carry all 3 of them? So I had definitely left the tidyverse. I couldn't wrap my head around how I was going to iterate over this data. It was non-standard in my mind. I couldn't picture it. So that just really was a struggle for me. And I was also struggling with the upfront design time. But a few weeks later, when things had settled down and I'd kind of gotten in the groove, I realized I was more in the sleep verse. I wasn't in the tidy verse. I was maybe in the simple verse, or maybe even the lean verse, because this process reminded me of implementing lean manufacturing on the factory floor. In lean manufacturing, it's all about removing waste from a process. So I began to experience for myself some of the concepts I had read about in some of those books I showed you. As our domain grew and the project grew, the domain actually became the documentation for myself, and I knew it would be great documentation for my future self. Using the units of measure meant that whenever we were calculating a production rate for a given line, the return type should explicitly be items divided by minutes. And using a single case DU meant that the function signature didn't take just a string, but it took specifically a line. And that function signature could tell me so much about what was going on in a function. Using options eliminated all the uncertainty that comes along with null checking. I mentioned I had done some work in C#, and I never felt like I had done everything I should have done because I felt like there was something else I should have been checking on. And so this idea of an option was just really great once I got comfortable with it. The status DU, this was really amazing to me that I realized we could never come up with a downtime event that had good items associated with it, that we had made that illegal state unrepresentable. And I just love the DUs, how they simplified the code. It makes it so much easier to figure out where you need to change things. If I add something to this status, the compiler is going to tell me where all I need to check in and make that addition. So in this design, even though it seemed cumbersome, the compiler became my friend, and I had much more confidence in my work, and I really enjoyed doing this. So I was quickly able to give up the data frame. Now, I never tried to develop a shared application in R, so I can't really compare this experience of what I've done in F#. But with Isaac's help, our small dev team of data science types, we were able to create web apps with SafeStack even before we really understood what was going on under the hood. And so that was really satisfying. My leap from using R in the data science world to F# was really cushioned. I had access to Isaac, Matthias, Matthew. I worked with a team of like-minded learners. I think it'll be much more challenging for other folks from the data science world to make the leap and feel confident about the work they're doing. I really do appreciate all the F# content that exists today, and I've taken advantage of a lot of it. F#'s a great language, and I'd like to see it be used more in data science. And I think with a few targeted additions, it can be more accessible to data science practitioners. Thanks for your attention. Can I answer any questions?
Let's see if we've got any.
Here we go.
So this is the first question we've got. Can you see it? Or should we? Here we use R more for analysis and exploration, and when we put it into production, we use F#. If we need to use some R library, we use the R provider, and it has worked very well for us. This is more of a comment.
Yeah, I guess I would say, I think it would be great if you could do it all in F#. You know, I guess when I was showing the parallel between the work in R and F#, it's so close. You know, and what you would need to do is it's not a big area of work that would need to take place to be able to do all of your data science in F#.
Yeah, another one. Have you tried using data frame in F#?
That's a fun question. I really wanted to, and I kept saying, "Hey, Matthias, there's this library that will let me use data frames in F#," and he kept saying, "No, give it up, don't do it." You know, so he was trying to shake me loose. So I was not given that opportunity. I would have liked it, but I think he thought it was really important for me to give that up so I could take full advantage of the domain structure in F#.
This one is pretty. Have you experienced any resistance in your company to using F#? Like, do you have to advocate?
No. The company that I worked for, SDI, was an early adopter of F#, and the owner was a real F# enthusiast, so I did not experience any resistance.
Nice.
I see another good question just below. Is F# suitable for exploring unknown data sets, data where the schema might not be known ahead of time?
Yeah, and I guess that's the point that I was trying to make, is that there's some small gaps that would be easy to close, that would make F#, where you could use F# in that environment. We saw how easy that was with R, with that summary function and being able to look at the data and the environment pane, that I don't think it would be very difficult to have a few functions in F# that would let you do the same kind of things. I try to use type providers. I did a script in R and then I did a script in F#, and the exploration phase was so much heavier in F#. But I don't think the development would be too cumbersome to overcome that, though. You were discussing earlier using or trying to attract Python users. I think if you attract R users, you're attracting Python users as well. I think the big gap right now is just that data exploration piece that's heavier in F#.
Mm-hmm.
I think that connects pretty well with the amplifying F# session, which was sort of telling us about how the community is stepping up to build those small missing things. So,
well, it would be nice to do it all in F#. It's a great language.
Perfect. I think that's a nice summary.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for your talk, and we're very happy that you were able to join us.
Thank you.
And good luck with growing F# across the company until gradually it will take over.
Thanks a lot.
Take care. See ya.
Bye-bye.